Howdy Commanders, Echo here. Today we're going to take a look at our first installment of our new series called Dear Wargaming. In this series, we'll be taking a look at some issues that I, and hopefully the rest of you, can agree upon that we would like to see Wargaming address with World of Warships Legends. I've used that phrase in several other videos before, that Dear Wargaming. It's come up quite a few times throughout videos, and I think it's appropriate to just make an entire series for easy reference for both y'all and hopefully in the future for Wargaming crew and staff benefit. Some of the issues we tackle in this series of Dear Wargaming are going to be really big, cataclysmic changes type of stuff, you know, fundamental underpinning type of things. Some of it's going to be really small, super teeny, niche, most people wouldn't have even noticed it type of issues, kind of running that whole spectrum. Some of it would be very easy for Wargaming to tackle, a simple hour or two worth of programming to make a small change. Some of it would be huge changes that might require an entire development team, several cycles to address. We're going to kind of run the gamut in terms of scale and scope of issues in this Dear Wargaming series. First topic we're going to tackle today is the commanders. I've got 5 kind of subtopics within that scope of commanders to talk about today, so let's dig right into it. Issue number 1 under this commanders tab for volume 1 of Dear Wargaming is a sound effect issue. Now, if y'all have been around for a little while, you may remember a time when when you go into the commanders tab here, you know, you're on your main splash page here, and you go into the commanders tab, and there was a time where all the nations were just on one long page that just scrolled from left to right, and there was not a nation-specific tab for all the commanders of the various nations, and you didn't tab through the various nations' navies one nation at a time. It was just one giant list from left to right, right to left. And at that time, when you moved your highlight box, as I'm doing here, you'd move it from, you know, all the way to the left and then all the way to the right, and it would get off the Americans and go to the Japanese. And when you did that, there was a sound effect every time you moved the box around. When they implemented this tab thing, nation-specific tabs, they kept that same sound effect when you changed tabs, but now, as you can hear, or rather not hear, they got rid of the sound effect for when you changed guys within the nation. I don't really see why you'd get rid of it. You could keep the same sound effect as when you change tabs, or, you know, maybe change the pitch of it slightly to give it just a slight bit of differentiation in sound effect. It's just one of those small quality of life things that it used to be there when it was that giant left to right scrolling all on one page system. You had a sound effect, and if memory serves, it was the exact same sound effect as this one. And now it's just gone. And if I open a commander up, there's still sound effects within the commander as we tab around on the skills and up and down the ranks, over on the base trait and on the inspirations. So there's no reason for this sound effect, when you change the cursor highlight box from commander to commander, to have gone away. It'd be really nice to see Wargaming put that sound effect back in. The next one on the list for commanders is a little bit more of an issue than just simply adding back in a sound effect. And this is that we need the ability to unselect or deselect a skill from the selectable skills tree for the various commanders. And I'm going to use Henry J. Hyde, Halloween event commander for the German battleships, as the prime case study for this, although there are arguments to be made for other commanders for sure. I just think that Hyde is probably the best example of why we need to be able to deselect or unselect a skill. Primarily, this comes into play with Hyde on his legendary skills. Now, Farsight is terrible. We'll talk about it in a little bit longer, but why anyone would ever choose Farsight, I have no idea. Now, when it comes to running with scissors, particularly since we've just added this new proxy mechanic, this is potentially a viable option to use on Hyde for some of the German battleships. Now, why do I say some? Well, some of the ships don't really want to use running with scissors and its added benefit of the proxy effect. This is, you know, your low and mid-tier ships like König, Kaiser, Bayern, as well as your very upper tier tech tree ships. Your Bismarck and I guess legendaries aren't technically part of the tech tree, but they're non-premiums, so also the Grosse Kurfürst. Those ships don't have torpedoes. They don't want to close to within, you know, 4.5, 6 type kilometer ranges to get the proxy effect of the shell damage from running with scissors. And since they do want to hang back a little more at that sort of medium to medium long range, where their armor is still relatively effective, especially if you're angling properly, and their guns haven't become so inaccurate that they're unusable, you don't want to take that hit to dispersion because you are at that kind of medium to medium long range. You don't want to be suffering from that dispersion impact while not really wanting to close to get the proxy bonus with running with scissors. However, there are some other German battleships that do want to use running with scissors because they do want to close to within, you know, 4.5 or 6 type of kilometer range. 6 is especially the sweet spot at Legendary 3 for Hyde. That's ships like the Gneisenau, the Scharnhorst, the Tirpitz, the Odin, all of the German battleships that have torpedoes that just so happen to have a 6 kilometer torpedo range. How great is that? So a Legendary 3 and especially a Legendary 4 Hyde getting the proxy effect from running with scissors, well, that's just what a Gneisenau, Scharnhorst, Tirpitz, and Odin want to be doing. They want to be closing to within that range to get their torps into play. Now, obviously, doing it all the time right off the bat in every situation is not the proper way to play those ships, but those ships running Hyde, you want to be able to look for those opportunities and exploit them whenever you can. And when you're doing that, you want the quick rudder shift time so you can swing out, get the torps off, swing back. You're going to be in closer quarters. You want the extra turret traverse, as we talked about in our Case for Kedra video. Check that one out. You want that turret traverse when you're in close quarters proximity, and because you're pushing in closer, the dispersion hit doesn't hurt as bad. So when Hyde is in Scharnhorst, Tirpitz, Gneisenau, Odin, he wants running with scissors. When he's in Kaiser, König, Bayern, Bismarck, Grosse Kurfürst, he doesn't want running with scissors. But if I'm going to run him in one of those German battleships that doesn't have torps, I don't want to pick Farsight. I don't want to be forced to have Farsight over running with scissors if I don't want running with scissors in one of those boats without torpedoes. Because Farsight is arguably the worst legendary skill in the game. I'd rather just be able to choose running with scissors when I'm in a ship that has torpedoes, and then just not have anything like I do all the time when I'm in Bismarck or Grosse Kurfürst, etc. Why would I give up a charge of the repair party just to, I don't know, just to not have running with scissors? It just doesn't make any sense that I can't unselect a skill. This goes for several other event commanders in their legendary slots. A lot of the Azure lanes kind of have no good option, especially the battleship commanders from Azure lane, and I can see in the future this coming up again, where there are only choices that have nerfs there, and you don't want those nerfs, you just want nothing. But maybe you want to play around with the build. This goes, you know, my Azure lane Nelson in slot 1, she only has flammable cannoneer and brawler. Both have drawbacks. Maybe I want to play around. Sometimes I want to use them maybe on the tech tree British battleships, but not on the Nelson itself, or whatever the situation may be. We need to be able to unselect a skill, and it can be just as simple as highlighting the skill and then hitting X on PlayStation or A on Xbox. You can, I'm sure that it can't be any more difficult to code that than it is to code the selection. That's what I'm doing now. You can take commanders out that have skills unselected in a given tier of skills on the tree. I do it all the time. I run Hyde all the time. He doesn't have anything selected in Legendary. I run Azure Lane Nelson. She doesn't have anything in slot 1 or Legendary. etc. So it's not like the game can't handle that. It's not like the game gets confused if you don't have a skill selected in a given slot. Why can't we just unselect or deselect a skill? Maybe we want to try something and it turns out to not work. We want to be able to unselect it and not suffer any of the nerfs or drawbacks associated with the skills in that slot. Third point I want to make in hashtag Dear Wargaming Volume 1 about commanders has to do with Jerzy Swirsky, the Polish commander of the Błyskawica destroyer. There is no Polish tab on the commander's menu. Where is he? Why can't I access him on the commander's tab? I own him. I have him. I have the Błyskawica, and subsequently I have Swirsky. Why can't I access him on the commander's tab? I can access him on the inspirations menu. Granted, it takes a while to get there. But I can access him on the inspirations menu. Why is there no Poland tab with Swirsky back here on the commander's tab? Either put it to the right of Italy, or as he's listed in the scroll menu for the inspirations, put him between the Soviets and Italy, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if you own him, you should be able to go to him in the commander's menu. Couple other kind of sub points, like 3B, if you will, on Swirsky, is that if you own him, you can't pull him from a commander crate. He's not in the rotation to get him as a duplicate. And I can't go buy him from the store. He is not in the commander menu. You can scroll all the way over. There's the Brits, there's the Japanese, there's the Germans, there's the Americans. There's no Swirsky anywhere in the commander menu. So I can't buy him for 900,000 blue, again, even though I own him. We've got Polish filters on the ships menu, and even people that don't own the Błyskawica have this. It's grayed out, to be fair, and they can't actually pick it, but it shows up. I own the Błyskawica, I have Swirsky, but going into the play menu and going to a versus AI or standard mode game is the only way I can, look at or work on my Swirsky. I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to accidentally queue up a game in the Błyskawica if, say I don't have it set up yet. I don't have the right skills selected. I wanted to look at Swirsky and I accidentally queued up a game, whatever. That shouldn't have to happen. We shouldn't have to go into the play a game menu to work on a commander to look at him. So we need to put Swirsky in the commander's menu. We need to put him in the store so he's buyable for 900,000 blue, and he needs to get integrated into the rotation, the random selection, pull of the lever, roll of the dice for the commander's crates. I would make that argument for people that own him that have bought him already. And I would even go so far as to say, kind of 3D, if you will, that I think Swirsky should be available in the store and as a pullable commander out of crates on the regular roster, even if someone does not own the Błyskawica. He has a very useful base trait. There are many people who run double concealment using Swirsky on DDs especially, and even on cruisers. Even some people that run triple concealment by using base commanders. It's a viable build, and it should be available to anyone. He's a real world, actual human, historical commander. He's not an event commander. Sure, he comes with one specific boat, but it's not like that boat was, a campaign reward. It was on sale for doubloons out of the store a couple of times. He's not associated with any particular event, and yet he's being treated like he was. He's being treated as he was an Azure Lane or Halloween event commander. You can't go buy him in the store for 900,000 blue. You can't pull him for a duplicate out of a commander crate. And you can't get him unless you spent a bunch of money on the ship. Well, what if I'm not interested in the ship, but I want Swirsky to be able to get him for the base trait? I think he should be available to everyone at all times, a regular part of the roster, a regular part of the rotation, and accessible both in the store and on the commander's tab. Point number 4 on hashtag Dear Wargaming Volume 1 Commanders has to do with the way we duplicate commanders to get personal or gold commendations. Now, when your roster is not full and you open a commander crate, you can only pull a commander that you do not already have so that your roster gets full. And I am here putting forth the argument that I think the same mechanic should kind of reset and be tweaked slightly, but basically the same concept apply once your roster is full. Okay, now you can only pull a commander that is not legendary. I have never once duplicated Scheer. He is a base commander. He's the base commander for the Germans. In all the commander crates I've opened, both German specific and, game-wide or general or universal commander crates, I have never once duplicated Scheer. And obviously I've never spent a blue or universal commendation on him. So he's still non-legendary. Now, not that I really care, obviously, that Scheer is non-legendary, but why do we have a mechanic in the game where it's guaranteed that you get somebody that you don't already have, and then after you've got everybody, you could just pull Von Essen 7 times in a row and make him legendary 70? It just doesn't make any sense. I think that same mechanic should reset. Okay, you've got everybody. Now your pool includes people who are not legendary 1. Okay, everybody in your Navy's legendary 1. Now your pool resets to everybody that's not legendary 2, and so on and so on and so on. So that way you can kind of be guaranteed that everybody's kind of leveling through legendary equally. And yes, you get blue universal commendations. Yes, you can buy guys out of the store. That's fine. But some guys are getting kind of left behind, and then I might feel obligated to spend blues on him or whatever. So if you've got the mechanic in place to flesh out your entire roster, I don't really see a reason to not implement it and then apply the same mechanic to, okay, now everybody that's not legendary. Okay, now everybody that's not legendary 2, etc. Obviously, we can leave event commanders out of this rotation, but I'd say that this type of thing should apply to all of these sort of quote-unquote historical or real-world commanders. Final point I'd like to make today about commanders in hashtag Dear Wargaming Volume 1 has to do with inspirations. There's actually 2 kind of sub-points as it comes to inspirations that I'd like to make. The first one is that there are up to 62 commanders from which to choose when scrolling through this menu. In much the same way that they kind of made pages or tabs for the various nations in the larger commanders menu, I don't understand why they couldn't just take the same pages or tabs sorting and apply it to the inspiration selection screen. Why can't I hit R2 or R1 rather to go to the Japanese, and another R1 to go to the Brits, and so on and so forth? I know who I'm going to want to pick, most likely. I'm not going to scroll through these and sort them out. I've probably got, the guy in mind that I'm going to pick. So why can't I just tab through them and have at least some level of organization? When there's now 62 potential commanders to be sorting through, that's a long way to sit here and hold right or left on the D-pad to get all the way through them. Kind of another sub-point beneath inspirations has to do with that 7-game or blue XP penalty that comes with switching an inspiration. See there, I switched my inspiration from Scott to Sims, and there's a 21,000 blue XP or 7 battle penalty to be able to switch that. Now I can go back to Scott for no penalty since I haven't played a game with Sansonetti after making that inspiration switch, thankfully. That's a great feature. But the bottom line is, inspiration gets you roughly the same impact as many of the skills in that kind of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% range, approximately, depending on who it is you're talking about and how high a level they are. Well, that's on par with many of the skills over here. There's no 7-game penalty or blue XP penalty to change these skills. There's no penalty if I go to a ship to take it out onto the high seas for a game. Anything obviously except for. But if I go to switch out a ship commander on the boat, there's no penalty for that. I can just switch out the commander willy-nilly, and there's no penalty for that. Imagine in the real world, when a new commander comes onto a ship, there's a whole turmoil of now things are going to be different, top to bottom, bottom to top. There's no penalty for switching the commander on the ship. There's no penalty for switching the skills within that commander. I can do this all day. Test out the build, take it out. Oh, that didn't work. Now let's test it out again. But to swap an inspiration, there's a 7 game and or 21,000 blue XP penalty. It doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not advocating that there be a penalty for switching skills or switching commanders on a ship. I'm just saying that if there isn't a penalty for those two things, why is there a penalty for switching your inspirations? Well, there you have it, Commanders. First edition of hashtag Dear Wargaming, focusing on some of the things that I think should be addressed with regards to commanders. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these 5 things. I know I made a couple kind of sub-points within a few of them, but overall kind of 5 categories. Nothing cataclysmic. We're not talking about any changes that really have a whole lot of impact on actual gameplay out there on the high seas. A lot of it's kind of quality of life issues. But I think they would go a long way to improving, you know, the user interfaces and the way we interact with the commanders metagame of World of Warships Legends, if you will. Let me know in the comments below what you think about my ideas here. If you have any other things you would maybe change about commanders. We're not getting into specifics about skills, you know, what the skills do or do not do. That wasn't really the focus here. Just sort of a larger picture about the commanders' menus, etc. Thanks an awful lot for listening, everyone. I greatly appreciate it. And as always, stay salty, Commanders.